So now that we've learned about returning values from a function, now we can do a few more things. Like for instance, we can simulate our dice roll inside a function. So we can just have a function that returns the value of the roll. And I also want to do some boolean functions that check our conditions. But before we do that, I want to try and clean this up a little bit. So what I want to do is copy and paste all of the functions that we already have to the end of the code, and then we're going to do function prototypes, and then we're just going to do function prototypes for the ones that we write from now on. And I think it'll just make this easier to read. So get everything. So I'm going to just copy this to the end. And then we need to create function prototypes. So basically I just copied and pasted all of the function definitions to the end. And now I'm going to copy and paste the function headers to the before the main function. And these are just our function prototypes. And remember, with the function prototype, you need a semicolon after. So display rules, and then we have a uwin. And let's see what else we have. You lost. And then display roll. And then I think the last one was menu. All right, so I actually like doing the function prototypes, and I like putting all the functions at the end because I feel like when you first open up the code and start looking at it, it's a lot easier to just see a list of your functions here and then your main function. So the way I would probably comment this is I would first of all have a comment here specifying that these are the function prototypes. Whoops. And then I want to comment at the bottom where the functions start, specifying that these are the function definitions. And I like to make this really obvious, so I do something like this. So function definitions. So then if someone's just kind of scrolling through the code, it's really easy to see where the function definitions start. And then I'm going to also specify the main function the same way. So do this. So I'm going to put this in front of the main function, and then I'm going to just put main function in here. So this way, like if someone's just kind of scrolling through the code, it's really easy to see where the main parts of the code are. So like, okay, here's the function prototypes, here's the main function, and then they're scrolling down, and here's the function definitions. And then what I want to do is just put a comment in front of each function and specify what the function does. So like this one, all it's going to do is display the rules. So, but I'm going to, it's pretty descriptive in the name, but I'm going to just say what it does. So display the craps game rules for the user. And then this one is, so this is if they win. So this is going to be output to, well, output for user if they win. And I might add some more description to that depending on what we end up adding to that. And then the you lost, output to user if they lose. The display role, so I'm just going to specify that this displays the roll from the dice. And then the menu, I'm going to specify that this displays the menu to the user, and we're gonna, so now that we know how to return a value from a function, we're gonna actually get the user selection inside the function. So we're gonna display the menu, ask them for their selection, and then we're gonna return what they select. So displays the menu to the user and gets their selection. And I'm gonna specify that if user enters 1, that means to play. If user enters 2, that means to quit. Okay, and we'll probably add to these as we go along. Let's start with simulating the dice roll with a function. So what we need to do with that is we're going to generate our random numbers inside a function, and then we're going to return the value that the function generates. So let's call that, if we're planning on returning the dice roll from a function, what function type will that be? Like what do we need to have for the return type?
Dice rolling?
Say that again?
For what?
For rolling the dice. Yeah, so int, and then let's just call this roll. And I don't think we need to send anything into the function, but what we want to do is copy and paste our dice roll code into this function. So I'm going to get this. And I'm going to add something to this. So I'm going to put some output to the user telling them that it's rolling the dice now. So let's just do cout. Rolling dice now. Do a /n. Oops. All right, so this function is now going to display rolling dice now. It's going to generate the 2 random numbers for the dice. And, well, actually, we need to put our variables in here. So we actually need int dice1, dice2, and roll total. And we need our 2. We need these maximum and minimum values. So I'm going to move those into this function. You could declare these as global variables as well. We're going to talk about that next time, but global variables are basically variables that all of your functions, including the main function, have access to. But the reason why I'm putting them in this function is because I don't think that any of our other functions are going to need them. And so it's usually, but that might change depending on the direction we go with writing this. We might end up needing them in more than one function, and then at that point you might want to declare them as a global variable. But you don't want to declare a global variable if you don't have to, because it can cause, global variables can cause logic errors that can be hard to find. So if you don't need a global variable, it's good not to use one. Okay, so we have this function that's simulating our dice. We have our roll total. And so now how do we get that value out of the function? Yeah, return. And then roll total. So we need to make a function prototype for this. So I'm going to put this at the top. And then all we need to do is go replace the couple places that we're rolling a dice with this function. So if we go into here, and we actually don't need these variables anymore because we put them into the function. So we're rolling the dice here, so I'm going to replace all of this with the function call So this is just going to be, well, this is going to be our roll total is equal to roll, and then we call the function. And I'm going to move this random seed generator up to the top of the code somewhere, so probably here under the variables. So when you're generating random numbers in a function, we only need to seed the random number generator once. So you can do that in the main function, and then each time that when the function is called, it'll get that seed from the main function. So you don't want to be calling this multiple times. So since we're calling that function multiple times, we don't want to put it in the function. I'm going to also put a comment here. So our variables. And I'm going to specify what this is doing. Sometimes just seeing a random line of code like that, someone might wonder what it's for. So I'm going to say that this is to seed the random number generator for the dice roll. So then it's just really obvious why I have that in the code. So let's replace our other, and I can take this out since I moved it. So we have our roll total, so we've rolled here. So I'm going to put a comment here and specify what this is doing. Roll the dice and get roll value. Get sum.
SUM.
Yeah. Actually, yeah. Let's say get sum of 2 dice. Get the sum. Roll the dice and get the sum of the dice. Now let's do, we had one more place where we were generating a random number, so right here. So right here, we just replace this with roll total equals roll. And then I'm going to also specify that this is getting value of, well, I should use the same wording. So let's copy and paste this. So roll the dice and get some of the dice. And then,
wait a second, doesn't that comment go down a few lines?
oh, yeah. Right here. Okay. Before we change anything else, let's just compile this and see if everything still looks like it's working. It's really easy to sit and change a ton of things, and then you go to compile it and it's really hard to figure out what's wrong if there's an error if you've changed too many things. So I like to compile as I'm going. P-O. It looks like it still compiles. Okay, would you like to play? Yes. Rolling dice now, you rolled 5. Yes. You win. Yeah, that's right, you rolled a 5. Roll again. Yes. Yes.
I was
You
just
lost.
concerned that it was rolling the same thing for some reason. But
Yeah.
there's a chance.
It looks like it's rolling different
Yeah.
things. But yeah, that one, it could have been. But this one, it rolled different things. So yeah, I think it's working. So let's do, well, the quit isn't working. So we're going to have to fix that. So so we're going to fix the quit. But before we do that, let's, I wanted to change these. So we have all of these statements with like, well, like for instance, this right here. So with this menu, we can get this selection because we're displaying a menu with a void function, and then we're inside our main function, we're asking the user for their selection, then we're checking to see if the selection is okay. What we can do is we can do all of this inside a function, inside our menu function, and then just return the selection. Does that make sense? So what I want to do, I'm going to just copy and paste this so we can go put it in the function and see what I mean. So let's go down to the menu. So if this is going to be returning something, we need to change this, and it's going to return a 1 or a 2. So what do we need to change this to? Yeah, int. And I'm going to leave this menu. I'm going to leave those there. Copy this into here. And so we need to add some things because now we have a selection variable that we haven't declared inside this function. So I'm going to declare that as an integer. And then cout, would you like to play? And I'm going to put some spacing in here so it's a little bit nicer. Let's see those. I'm going to take this off. And so would you like to play? And I'm going to also make this a little more clear what they're supposed to be entering by doing cout, enter your selection, and then we have the cin selection already, so it's going to get the selection, and then we're going to check and see if what they entered was good. So while selection does not equal 1 and selection does not equal 2, cout, enter a valid selection, and then I'm going to actually give them the options again. So I'm going to copy and paste this into the loop. So like right here where it says, I'm just going to say invalid selection, and then give them the options again. So invalid selection, and then they get the 1 to play, 2 to quit, enter your selection, and then cin selection. Presumably after this runs, selection is going to have either a 1 or a 2, so then we can just return it to the main function. So return selection. And now what we can do is we can go replace some of our code in our main function with this function, because now this function is not only getting our selection for us, but it's testing to see if it was correct or not. So we can take that whole loop out of our main function. Let's go back up here and see where that was. So all of this, we can take all of this out now, because that's all in the function. And we can say, so selection equals, and then it's going to get the value from this menu function. And I'm going to specify what this is doing. So this is displaying a menu to the user, get user, well, I'm going to say that this returns user selection. I'm going to specify that 1 is play and 2 is quit. Okay, so we have the selection, the dice roll. So this is something that I think we need to look at. So right now, we have if selection is equal to 1, okay, selection menu. So this should actually go outside of this. Do you guys see what the problem is right now? So we have this, so while selection is 1, so that's running our game, and then we want to, so if the user, so we want to start the game, display the menu and everything else to the user, and then if they select 1, then we're going to roll the dice. So this selection equal menu shouldn't be inside here, it should be just before this if statement. Does that make sense? Because right now, let's look at what this is doing. So right now, this is going to start the game. So if we start at the top, we have our variables. We're seeding our random number generator, displaying the rules. And then at this point, after we display the rules, we're going to start our while loop to start the game. And each time the game runs, we want it to ask the user, well, we want it to give the user the menu of 1 to play, 2 to quit, and then the option to enter what they want to do. And then after they enter what they want to do, we have this if selection is equal to 1, then it's going to roll the dice. But right now we have, like, it's only giving them, so it's like it's going into the loop and then it's saying if selection is equal to 1, and then it's displaying the menu. So this is still working because I've set the selection equal to 1, but the problem is now if they hit 2 to quit, it doesn't quit. So this needs to be outside of the if statement, like this selection. So I'm going to move it.
So hit it, but then keep going throughout it.
Yeah, so then the next time it will quit, but
Okay.
but the first time it won't because it's still going to continue through all the code and roll the dice and everything else.
Then when it gets back to checking it, it'll finally quit, but
Yeah,
had a similar problem.
yeah. These logic problems can be... So, okay, so we got... Let's see if this still works. So all we've done so far is so we've turned our menu into a function that returns the user's selection. So it's really the only change we've made. And then we've moved the selection before this if statement that tests to see if they entered 1 or 2. Yeah.
Do you have selection initialized like in both functions, in the main function and in your?
That's a good question. Yeah, I have it initialized here because I need it to be 1 for this loop to start. And then I also have selection inside this menu. And these are actually different variables, like they have different memory locations. I could call this selection inside this menu something else. And it might be good to call it something else just so it's less confusing. So let's call this one user selection. And then I just change all of these. So user selection, user selection.
So if it's initialized in like the menu function, then you don't need to do it in the main function?
Well,
Or do you still need to do that?
so I think I still need to do it because I have this, go back up there, change this. So I have this loop that is running the entire game over and over and over. And so for it to go into the loop the first time, that selection has to be equal to 1. Because the condition for this loop to run is while selection is equal to 1. So we could do this differently by, there's a couple different ways we could do this. We could put the menu outside of this loop for the first time. So we could put the menu outside so that it's getting the value before it goes into the loop. And that might actually be a better way to do it. But anyway, so in fact, let's do it that way. So if we put this menu outside of this loop, so then it's getting the user selection before it goes into the loop, then we don't need to initialize that to 1 because it's going to get a value from the user before it gets to the loop. And then, but then what we need to do is, since it's not going to display the menu again, now we're going to have to display the menu again, like at the end somewhere. So basically where we ask if they want to play again. Let's see. I don't want it at the very end because, so after it goes through the second roll, so we probably want to display this right here, I think. Maybe I'll leave it how it was, because now I'm getting confused. We can
That's
change
fine.
it in a minute. So I'm going to just put this back how it was.
So does that need to say the user selection?
No, because this is in the main function. So in the main function, the variable is called selection.
Okay.
And in the function, I have it named user selection. But remember, there are two separate variables. Like, so even if they had the same name, they're still two different variables, just because one's inside a different function from the main function. So if they were the same name, when it is running the menu function, the selection variable inside the main menu is hidden, basically. So it only sees the one inside the function. And then after it's done running the function, the variable inside the function basically goes away, and then it has the variable inside the main function again. So you have to think of them as like two different variables, and that's why here I'm setting selection equal to menu, because menu is returning the selection from the function. Yeah.
Okay.
Let's see if this is still working, and then work on a few more things. And it looks like there's an error somewhere. Oh, I still have it called a void function here. So my function prototype doesn't match. I forgot to change the function prototype when I changed the heading of the function. All right. So would you like to play? Yes. 8. Play again. Yes. Yes. And it looks like it's still working. And our quit works now too, so that's a good thing. So now what I want to do is a boolean function. So what I want to do is turn all of these, so we have all of these if statements that are checking conditions for the roles. And I think that it would be easier and a little more logical in our code to have those as boolean functions. So I'm going to do this one. So this is our first role. And so this one we're testing to see if they won. So I'm going to copy and paste this condition, go down here and write a boolean function. So I'm at the very end now, and so this is going to be a boolean function that tests to see if they won on first roll. And then since this is a boolean function, it's just going to be a bool. And I'm going to do, what should we call this? So this is testing. So maybe 1 first roll. Does that look good? And we need to send it a value because it needs to know what it's testing, right? Like it needs to know the value of the roll total, because that's in our condition. So we need to send it the roll total, which is an integer. So this function is going to have a parameter. So it's going to be int roll total. And then I'm just going to do a bool test variable. And then we have our condition. So if roll total is equal to 7 or roll total is equal to 11, test variable is true, else test variable is false. And then we need to return the boolean from this function. So we're going to have return test variable. And then we need to do our function prototype for this. So I'm just going to copy and paste the function heading to our function prototypes, semicolon. And then remember, with the prototype, we don't actually need this parameter name. We can just put int. So like this one here too, I can just have int. And that's a little more concise way to write these. And then what I can do is go down here and replace this this condition with this function. So this function is roll, one first roll, and then we're sending it the roll total. So then if this is true, it's going to display, run this uwin function, and then if it's false, it's going to go check this next else if condition. So let's write the next one. So we want to write a boolean function that's going to test the condition to see if they lost. And so we want to do basically the same thing, except this function is going to be testing a different condition. And so I'm going to call this lost first roll, because we, just to stay consistent, because we called this other one first roll. So let's go write a function for that. So this is going to be a boolean function, so bool lost first roll, and then this is also going to need the roll total because it's going to be checking to see if, like, it's going to be checking the conditions to see if they lost. So this is, so we need our bool test variable again, and then we're just going to have some if statements to test this condition. So if the roll total is equal to 2, 3, or 12, that means that they're going to lose, and so that means that this test variable is going to be true. Else it's going to return false, it's going to be false, so test variable is equal to false, and then we're just going to return the test variable. And we need a function prototype for this, so I'm just going to do that now so I don't forget. So it's just going to go here in our list, and I can take the roll total off because we just need the type, not the name of the parameter. And then let's go put the lost first roll in this if statement. So this is, so we want to change this condition to just calling this function, so lost first roll, and we're sending it the roll total. And that should be all we need. So we're basically still doing the same thing. We just have Boolean functions testing these two conditions instead of having that big long statement inside our if and else if statements. So that's with the first roll. Remember that this game, we have different conditions for every single roll after the first roll. So I want to do the same thing with those. And so for the second roll, if they roll a 7, they're going to lose. So I'm going to call this function maybe lose second roll, and let's get this condition. So let's go down here and write another Boolean. So this is going to be bool, just call this lost second roll. So this is going to be true if they roll a 7 or if they lose. And this is going to need the roll total again. And we're basically just going to have the same stuff with a different condition. So I'm just going to copy and paste this code into this function. And then I'm going to replace this condition with the condition that we need for this to be true. So, and then I need to make a function prototype for this one. Just go up there and do that. And I can take this variable name off. And then I'm going to go replace this, what did I call that again? Lost second roll. So I'm going to go replace this condition in here with this function. So lost second roll, and we're sending it the roll total. And then that should be basically the same thing still. So then I want to do the same thing with this one. So on the second roll, remember if they roll a value equal to the point, so that's basically the value that they got on the first roll. Like if they didn't win or lose their first roll, anything other than the conditions for winning or losing, that value becomes a point. And then for the second roll, if they roll a value equal to that point, then they win. So that's our condition for winning the second roll. So I'm going to write a boolean that's called win second roll. So this one's going to be bool win second roll, and it's going to need this roll total again. Oops. And this is going to basically be the same code that we have in our other booleans, except we're going to have a different condition that we're testing. So I'm just going to copy and paste that code into here. And then I'm going to copy and paste our condition into this if statement. And then I need to define a function whoops. Undo. And then I need to define a function prototype for this one. And then let's go down here. So this is called win second roll. So I'm going to replace this condition in this else if statement with win second roll, and then we need to send it the roll total. All right, so basically the whole point of doing this is so that basically we replaced all of our conditions for testing our rolls with these Boolean functions. So like with this if statement, it's really easy to see, okay, this statement is testing to see if they won the first roll. This else if statement is testing to see if they lost the first roll. Else roll point is equal to roll total. And then and then we ask if they want to continue to roll. And then if they do, so after their second roll, this if statement is testing to see if they lost the second roll. And this else if statement is testing to see if they won the second roll.